in chapter 12, Lord Krishna, in 20 short verses, shows us the crux of the Vedas. Chapter 12 is an amazing chapter because if you look at all of those thick texts, you say, okay, how do I now categorize what's going on in these big texts? That's what chapter 12 does for us. Now let's ask, how does chapter 12 start? This is going to give us some context. To know that, we have to go to chapter 11. In chapter 11, Krishna revealed to Arjuna that the entire universe of names and forms, including orders and laws, all of that are manifestations of the one intelligence. So this means the one intelligence, which we call Ishvara. From the aspect of gravity, we call that gravity. From the aspect of heat, we call that heat. From the aspect of air, we call that air. So this means we give different names to define this one intelligence from different angles. So all of this results in the one intelligence. So this means from the standpoint of the manifested universe, which you are now experiencing right now, including using your pen to write things down, I hope, all of that is material belonging to this universe. And this infinite intelligence, which includes all of those manifested forms, laws, and orders, is called Vishwarupa Ishwaraha. So what is Vishwarupa Ishwaraha? The Lord from which nothing is missing. This means the all-inclusive principle, the all-inclusive intelligence from which everything else comes. The birds, the trees, the sun, the clouds, different personalities, different faces, male, female, all of these are principles within this very intelligence. Now, what was Arjuna's mistake in chapter 11? He witnessed this Vishwarupa Ishwara as though having a separate existence from his own. So what did he do? He then pushed the world away. That's why he said, stop showing me this vision, Krishna. I cannot handle it anymore. So this very act of pushing the world away, what happened? Instead of embracing it, he pushed it away. And therefore, he sustained his perturbed mind, which he was trying to get rid of. So that's the irony. I push the world away. I keep on sustaining this perturbed mind. But the perturbed mind is what I'm trying to get rid of. Therefore, there's no question, number one, of pushing things away, but embracing them. Therefore, all restlessness of the mind can be traced to one root cause, and that is putting things under the carpet, not willing to look at them, being fearful, too much to handle. No, when they arise is the perfect opportunity to attack them right then and there. So what does this mean? It means two things. First of all, Arjuna hasn't used his free will to look into his troubled thoughts, as we can use our free will to look into whatever happening in the moment. I can say, stop. Let me see what's going on inside this thought. Where is it coming from? Arjuna hasn't done that, not yet at least. And second, resisting whatever's in front of me. This is a second mistake that Arjuna did. So what's in front of me is the world. I resist that. And that persists with my turbulent mind instead of getting curious. So first, use free will to look into your thoughts. And second, get curious whenever these problems or these perturbations arise. Instead of judging them, get curious. Get curious into what they are, where they're from, where could they be coming from. Now, in chapter 12, verse 1, this fear, which caused Arjuna to push the world away, it motivated Arjuna to solve it. This is good because some of us, we feel fear and then we say, no more, I don't want to deal with this. But Arjuna said, no, I want to address this. So what did he do? He asked Krishna, in order to resolve my perturbed mind, O Krishna, the mind which is an obstacle, which is denying me from holding this permanent reality without it going in and out, in order to do that, which is better, Saguna Bhakti or Nirguna Bhakti? Before moving on, we will explain what is Saguna Bhakti. Saguna Bhakti is the entire Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, in summary. This means every Vedic spiritual practice other than Jnana Yoga. That is Saguna Bhakti. So everything except self-knowledge. What is Nirguna Bhakti? Nirguna Bhakti is self-knowledge, because that's the only other choice. This knowledge is specifically found in Brahma Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 9, chapter 13, and we will continue with other chapters we will see, and the Upanishads. Chandogya Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, etc. It's all there. Nirguna bhakti can also mean moksha, whereby this devotion is both spontaneous, but it's also effortless, owing to your prior sadhana, to your prior practice. Just like if you drive a car ongoingly, it becomes effortless and normal. You don't even talk about being a good car driver. It's just normal. In that same case, Nirguna bhakti is just normal. It's just the way of how things are. Now, how does Krishna answer? He says, it's not a matter of which is better. Is saguna better or is nirguna better? It's a matter of qualifications. In other words, saguna bhakti is a means or a way to arrive to nirguna bhakti. Then Krishna enters into two topics. First is bhakti sadhana. This is between verse 3 to 12. This is a range of practices. It is not one particular practice. Specifically, it is karma yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. The second topic which Krishna addresses is bhakti palam. You're naturally now asking, after going through these sadhanas, what is the fruit? What is the benefit? This is between verse 13 to 19. Now let's address bhakti sadhana. It consists of 5 stages. So we've taken karma yoga, level 1, 2, upasana yoga, level 1, 2, and jnana yoga, that equals 5. So karma yoga, level 1. Now, without telling you what I already said before, I'm going to take a little different spin. So where are we now? Karma yoga, level 1. And I want to give you a context why this is the very first spiritual practice, not only to prescribe to your children, but also the easiest for the one who is only beginning spirituality. You'll see that why now. So when a person is born, including you and I, from a standpoint of the body, when they're born, they carry forward 2 aspects. One is their punya papa karma from the past life. And 2, all unfulfilled desires from the past life. In other words, unfinished business. So punya papa and unfulfilled desires is what makes up the baby that you're holding and you're calling him or her cute. That includes yourself as a body. That is a result of punya papa and unfulfilled desires. So both of them make up what's called prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma means destiny. This means how things are to unfold in life. And this prarabdha karma is further modified by the person's free will actions called purushartha. So this is why there is no such thing as set destiny, because not only does a person take punya papa and gets also sculpted by the unfulfilled desires, but also they're always applying their purushartha, their free will. Therefore, their prarabdha karma immediately starts to change by the time they hit 9, 10, or 11, and they're able to exercise their intellect and to start to make decisions on their own. This is why you will see your own child, by the time they hit this age, by 10, even 9, 10, 11, they will already start to make their own. You see a personality that you haven't seen before. Or you will see it like, oh, it's been building on. Why? Because their prarabdha karma is running. So this means it's not wise to tell a young person, or even in those who are in spirituality, which you've heard many times before, that desires are bad. Right? Desires are bad, right? Get rid of your desires. It is also not wise to suppress them. Why? I just said, because prarabdha karma is way too strong for them to be able to suppress their desires. They don't even have the proper knowledge on how to suppress it, let alone just telling them suppress your desires. So one thing that we should not say to people is, oh, okay, so you got desires? No, just, suppress them. They're not good. Even if you say this to a person, no way. The force of that prarabdha karma is way too strong for them to even try. So now the question comes, what practice should you and I prescribe to this person whose prarabdha karma is so strong, and yet we can convert that strength of that prarabdha karma into a spiritual sadhana? What practice should we give that person who is unwilling to not exercise their desires? You understand the question so far? Okay, so before I answer, why? Because if prarabdha karma is left untamed, what's going to happen? They then go through another life, continuing exactly according to the punya papa and the unfulfilled desires of the previous life. This is called samsara. life after life, they keep on doing the same thing in different combinations and permutations on the basis of who happens to be in their sphere of influence. So that's the first understanding. So this prarabdha karma has to be thus intercepted using a spiritual sadhana. So the answer is to this question, the person is still allowed to perform their unfulfilled desires. That's the first. I just said why, because the prarabdha karma is going to go anyway. They're allowed to do that. But whatever happens, they get to see the result, not their actions, but the result as either a blessing or as a response from this one intelligence. And this is called Ishvara Prasadaha, the grace of Ishvara. So this means, how do you apply this now to your own child? First of all, you need to tell them, what is this intelligence? So you first kind of explain, so this intelligence is on what you observe, like the 4 seasons. You know, what says when the autumn, winter, summer, when does that come? What dictates that it's 24 hours and not 15 hours? What dictates the 8 planets or our 365 days? What dictates all of these variables that are present? So you kind of explain just the basic that they can observe. You know, what makes this food grow? And how does this food respond on the basis of the sun? Where is this all coming from? So you first kind of introduce the presence of this intelligence. And then you say, dear child, whatever something comes as a result of your actions, acknowledge this very intelligence that I just told you about. It is coming from this very intelligence. So this is at this stage good enough, because this is going to get them to start thinking about this grander, bigger picture called Lord. Karma Yoga level 2. Eventually, only to the sadhana practiced in Karma Yoga level 1, this bhakta becomes mindful of the intelligence of this one intelligence, not only in the results, which is only true in Karma Yoga level 1, but also through their actions, because they've been thinking about this so long. Now it's starting to spill over into their own actions also, not just their results. So this means the bhakta, their actions now become a form of devotion. To what? To this intelligence which they have been devoting to in stage 1. Why? Because now it's no longer just for my sake, but it's for the sake of the whole, because I'm only responding to this big intelligence, to this vast intelligence. So now Karma Yoga level 2 is no longer just for my sake, it is for the sake of the whole. So this attitude, what does it do? It purifies and it expands the mind. Now you're going to say, how exactly does it purify and expand the mind? Like, provide the logic for that. Okay, so the logic is, long as the person does actions for their sake, what are they reinforcing? What are they sustaining?
Sanskaras, impressions.
Excellent. And that comes from the past life. In other words, as long as they keep on sustaining their shouldism, how the world should be, how the people around me should be, how the world shouldn't be, how food should be, how you should be, how you shouldn't be, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, what I should wear, what I should look like. As long as this shouldism is sustained, what does that do? It creates a very narrow vision, a narrow possibility out of all of the other possibilities around them. In other words, the person becomes as though one-sighted, only seeing one single number amongst many different possibilities. Now, is that going to make the person grow? Absolutely not, because the person simply continue, as Mina has said, their old perspectives within the sphere of that one single possibility. Therefore, how is the mind going to expand? Impossible. Next level is Upasana Yoga level 1. In chapter 12, this is called Abhyasa Yoga. So what's now the logic for this coming after Karma Yoga level 2? Karma Yoga level 2 has done what? It's lessened the mind's agitations. What are these agitations? As I said, shouldisms. Therefore, the person becomes qualified for meditation. So whenever we say the mind's agitated, perturbed, disturbed, restless, what are we talking about? Suppose you say now, I'm restless. What do you really say? What did you just say when you said that? I'm restless, I'm perturbed. Okay.
Many thoughts at the same time, many incoherent thoughts at the same time. Can you say that?
Suppose I say, oh, I'm so agitated. Okay, what is the difference between that agitation and when the mind's not agitated? What's going on when the mind's agitated? What narrative is going on in the mind?
Conflict.
and you're resisting the situation.
Ah, super. So conflict and resistance with what is in front of me. So what does this mean? I have one image of how things should be, but what's this? Totally different than my own shudism, than my own raga dvesha, my own likes and dislikes, my own samskaras, my own vasanas. So this means on the basis of them not matching, that results into what we call an agitated mind. I'm bringing this up because we keep on saying agitated mind. I'm so annoyed, I'm agitated, I'm perturbed. What are you talking about? This means there's a narrative called shudism, how things should be. You ask any person who is disturbed, you ask them, what should happen and what shouldn't happen right now? There is not one person who's not going to have an answer to that. Someone's always going to say, Dark shouldn't be barking. She shouldn't be talking to me right now. He shouldn't be doing this right now. Everyone is a professional at having shoulds and shouldn'ts. So this means as long as they're there overshadowing what is in front of me, that equals a perturbed, disturbed mind. Therefore, what does Karma Yoga level 2 do? It lessens that intensity. That makes a person qualified for Upasana Yoga level 1, which is called meditation. The question is, what kind of meditation in Upasana Yoga level 1? Any kind of personalized or customized meditation that the bhakta is personally attracted to. Some people are attracted to Kriya Yoga, or Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, XYZ Yoga, it doesn't matter. It still has some meaning for them. That is good enough. So this means, what is Upasana Yoga level 1? Ishta Deva. What is Ishta Deva? It means I'm attempting to enjoy or contact my personal version of divinity according to my notions. So whatever those notions are, that's my version of divinity. And then I use the practice in order to, quote, contact that version. Now, I need to put a little disclaimer here. It is not always like this. As I said, there's always an exception to everything. Yoga is a beautiful practice, and there is also practices for expanding the mind, sharpening, the intellect, and just making a person's strong body. So I'm not now going to generalize and say this is how it is for every single practice. It's not at all like that. Okay. Then comes, as a result of going through this meditation, comes Upasana Yoga level 2. Now you're going to say, what has this meditation done in level 1? It's refined the mind. It's refined the viveka enough that it can start to ask questions. Therefore, Upasana Yoga level 1 refined the buddhi enough to question one's own Ishta Deva. That's the irony. In level 1, what happened? You were meditating on your own personalized God, Jesus, Buddha, Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta, right? It was a Shiva, Vishnu, Ganapati, etc., Durga, Saraswati. And now, on the basis of that meditation, the person has refined their intellect enough to question, wait a minute, why am I meditating on Shiva? Why not Vishnu? Who's superior here? Who's the big boss here? Right? Who's the Lord of all? Why so many gods here? Why they all within? Is Shiva still there when I'm not thinking about Shiva? In other words, the person starts to get into a natural inquiry owing to the basis of the refined mind in Upasana Yoga level 1. So this means now they start to ask questions. Who created time and space? Where are all these gods located? Who created them? Who created time and space? The one that's accommodating all these gods. So you can see how Upasana Yoga level 2 is very close to inquiry. But you're still lacking what knowledge? You're still lacking knowledge of I am. So in Upasana Yoga level 2, what happens? You extend your Ishtadeva from one form into the entire universe called Vishwarupa Ishwaraha. Therefore, here your Ishtadeva now encompasses everything. This is the title of chapter 11, by the way, where the entire world is just God. God is everything. However, what's still missing in Upasana Yoga level 2? I do not still understand that I am that. I am not different from what I am understanding to be the Lord. So this means we need now to complete this incompleteness through the last stage, Jnana Yoga. Only to the prior 4 stages in Jnana Yoga, it made the buddhi subtle enough in order to capture these subtler realities. So this means those four practices were not wasting your time. They were all there to refine the mind enough, the buddhi, in order to capture the subtlest of the subtlest. And what's the most subtle? Awareness, your true nature. Therefore, now the mind in jnana yoga starts to inquire, what is this non-changing awareness that's illumining the mind, the very mind that's trying to discover this awareness? What's illumining that mind? But what's also illumining the sensations all day long throughout my entire life? And what is the nature of that I? And how am I, the body mind, related to that awareness? So this means the person still doesn't quite see that they are that awareness. So there's still a mind separate apart, inquiring into awareness as though it is an object of inquiry. That's where they're at now. And eventually, through the course of Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, the 3 stages, the person, through Shastra and faith and the acharya, starts to realize that there is no actual difference between this person who's inquiring into awareness and awareness itself. There is one content alone. Next question. What is Jnana Yoga? If you remember the term, I spoke some time ago. What is Jnana Yoga? Consistent and systematic study of Vedantic scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a competent acharya. I see Goknur is smiling on this. She remembers very well. The next question is, what is a competent acharya? There are several qualifications there. The first is, before answering that, suppose you go to a maths class and the teacher, supposedly a teacher, they know what addition is, subtraction, multiplication, division, but they do not know how to use it to create their own formulas. Would you listen to that person? Even though they're proficient at mathematics, but they do not know how to use mathematics to, just basically add numbers. No way. So intellectual knowledge alone is not enough. Okay, this is a plus sign, this is a minus sign. Okay, trigonometry, algebra, right? That is not enough. You need to know, how do I use this understanding to arrive to the equation? In that same way, the acharya has to have grasped the knowledge themselves. Otherwise, it's going to come across, and the students are simply not going to capture it themselves. They're going to say, well, this guy is just kind of, a university professor. And the second is, the teacher has to learn and reflect all the time by themselves. Because suppose you go to a teacher and they themselves talk on the basis of 10 years ago. And from then on, they said, I've figured everything out. I can now just keep on saying the same old thing in different combinations. Are you going to listen to that person over someone who themselves is a student as much as a teacher? Yeah, you want someone, that means we want someone that is in themselves constantly learning, because no one knows everything here. So this means grasp the knowledge and learned student themselves. The second is, the teacher teaches a wide range of topics. Suppose you only go to a maths class and you only learn about multiplication and division. Is that a complete teaching? No. This means you also need to get the entire trigonometry, algebra, addition, subtraction, etc., right? In order to grasp the topic called mathematics. So this means the teacher does not select only parts that they're comfortable with and then talk about that. It is the duty of the teacher to understand the entire equation, the entire picture, whether it's emotions, buddhi, your memories, relationships, all of that is the responsibility of the teacher, because you're talking to real life people. You're not talking to, like these little blocks and then say, okay, let me deliver the knowledge about awareness. And I just keep on regurgitating that over and over again. That is not a teacher. Why? Because the Shastra includes everything. And the Shastra is on the basis of hundreds of rishis, the word of Ishvara. Now, who am I to select and say, only this is worth talking about? What am I saying? I'm smarter than all knowledge. So this means, what is a competent teacher? The one who teaches according to the tradition. They do not select only the topic of self or emotions or intellect and they say, I've got the whole teaching. You don't, because you need to complete the whole equation so that it makes sense. Furthermore, there are exceptions. We said the person needs a competent acharya. Now, what did I say earlier? Everyone is born with their punya papa, but also their desires. This means it carries over to the next life. Now, sometimes what happens is the person has done so much spiritual work that when they get born, they are super qualified and they actually don't need a teacher. This is the case of Ramana Maharishi. You just need one little event to cause a self-inquiry, and that self-inquiry starts a momentum of its own. Look at Nisargadatta Maharaj, right? He just simply went to his teacher, and what did his teacher say? Simply go back to the source of I am, and just stay there. And that's all he did. He just had faith in the teacher. Okay, I am. Okay, just go back to the source, the place behind all of the words, the place that's always true. That's all he did. On the basis of that, he realized the final reality. So sometimes you don't need the teacher, but this is highly, highly rare. And then we, sort of fantasize, oh, I'm one of those. I don't need a teacher, right? You take Ramanujan, the maths professor. He didn't have a teacher, and yet he was brilliant in mathematics. 3 stages of Jnana Yoga. Shravanam, which is expounding the Vedantic scriptures. Mananam, after the expounding has taken place, you then ask, in reference to where I find myself, how is this true? How is this scriptures true? And you go, well, I don't see it quite true. I don't quite see how it fits the scriptures. Maybe the scriptures are old. Now, it is your job in Mananam to remove that doubt so that your understanding is in line with the scriptures. Not to question the scriptures, but to align your understanding with the scriptures. The 3rd stage is Nididhyasanam. This is repeatedly reminding yourself of your higher nature through the scriptural studies. Now, there's a little irresponsibility that happens in some schools. They're called partial Vedanta schools, Neo-Vedanta schools. What happens is they go straight to Nididhyasanam. That's the high stage. Now, what I said about Nididhyasana, reminding who you are. So what do? They mostly remind the seeker who they actually are. So the seeker kind of gets up on a microphone and says, I want this reality. I've been looking for it for so long. And then the teacher, with all due respect, as I said before, everyone has some part to play, says, you are awareness behind all thoughts, behind all words. It's always illumining everything, never hurt by anything. It's always been witnessing your entire life. And the person's like, oh, okay, yeah, it feels so good. Okay, thank you. And then they sit down, right? Now, is that mind going to take that knowledge the moment it walks out into the real world? Forget about it. Why? Because the 4 previous sadhanas have not qualified the mind enough in order to hold the final reality. So this is why it's actually useless. Even though what I'm doing is true from a standpoint of giving you Nididhyasana reminders, it's still useless because first of all, as I said, the mind is not qualified. Therefore, everything just falls off. There's no super glue on there. And then the seeker gets frustrated. They said, I've been searching, I've been speaking to all these XYZ Gs, and every time it feels so good when I listen to them, it feels so true. Of course it feels true because you already know what they're talking about. You are the self. So it's not like you can dispute them, but the person still gets frustrated because they cannot hold that knowledge. And the second reason why it fails is Shravanam and Mananam was skipped. That means the proper teaching, expounding step-by-step manner, that was skipped. And the teacher hasn't told you that you're supposed to then inquire and remove doubts on the basis of what you have learned. Okay, next is Bhakti Palam. So that was verse 3 to 12. Bhakti Palam is verse 13 to 19. This is the fruit of self-knowledge. Question is, how do you know that Jnana Yoga, the last stage, is working? The answer is the knowledge has to have an emotional transformation in your personality. This is where your emotions actually become a clear indicator, barometer, whether this is working or not. If it doesn't, then you still continue the 5 sadhanas. Did I just say continue just Jnana Yoga? No. Why? Because it is not clear cut. You cannot now say you only do Karma Yoga and then Karma Yoga level 2, and then it's not like that. Sometimes we need meditation, sometimes we need devotion, sometimes we need to service, sometimes we need prayer, sometimes we need to go to a temple, sometimes we need knowledge. That's how it is. In other words, life is not linear. That's why we say go back to the 5 sadhanas. How does self-knowledge have an emotional impact? Because I said, what's the transformation indicator? What's the indicator? Emotional transformation. So how exactly does it have an impact for the person that has firmly assimilated this knowledge? So I'll give you a little something to follow. Everyone is born ignorant. Does anyone get born and suddenly know the English language? Hey, mommy, yeah, I'm hungry. Give me some food. No. So this means when we're born, we don't even know the basics, not even how to walk, not even how to eat. We even have to get trained how to do that. Now we just take it all for granted. Like, oh, I'm so professional at eating. In other words, everything, the basics of the basics, you don't even know. That's called total ignorance. Life after life, we have to learn the same old thing again. Now, as we learn, what happens? Ignorance of whatever it is that you learned knowledge about, that gets removed. You learn English, then ignorance pertaining to English gets removed. You learn Hindi, ignorance of that gets removed. And then what happens? There's a certain relief, is there not? Oh, now I know how to drive a car. You know, I feel kind of good. I have a certain knowledge. So every time we remove ignorance, what's the byproduct of that? There's an emotional relief of no longer being ignorant pertaining to that specific subject area. So far, what have we said? Where does all knowledge and ignorance, where is that happening? Where is all knowledge and ignorance taking place?
In the mind.
In the mind, specifically?
Buddhi.
The buddhi, the intellect. So all knowledge and all ignorance happens specifically in the intellect. That's the first thing that we can ascertain. The second is the emotion, that means the relief of having removed that ignorance in the buddhi is just a byproduct of having successfully done that. So what does this mean? It means even the knowledge of self, of I am, even that is contained within the buddhi. The same buddhi that has ignorance of English and gets removed through knowledge in the buddhi, that very buddhi also has ignorance of who is this subject that's always present. And the removal of that ignorance also happens in that very same buddhi. This is why we say the Jnani, where does the self-knowledge take place? In the buddhi, your only refuge. So now imagine those schools who say, you need to, kind of like silence your mind. Just turn your mind down, you're not the mind and all that stuff. What does that imply? Oh, I'm not the intellect, I'm not this. Your only refuge to the bigger truths of life is through the intellect. Now, a question, why do we remove ignorance in the first place? Why are we motivated to remove ignorance in the first place?
Or if we don't, we'll continue to suffer rebirth. We're trapped in samsara.
Okay, suppose you don't know rebirth or samsara. Why do we just want to get rid of our ignorance?
It makes us unhappy.
Yeah, good. It's painful to have ignorance. It reminds us of our smallness. In other words, we cannot stand ignorance. Why? Because every individual inherently knows my nature is fullness. I am all knowledge, all power. And yet when a person gets born, they find themselves with limited knowledge, limited power. So they are living in a state of smallness. And that produces all sorts of emotional problems. In fact, some people find ignorance so repulsive that even if you put in 1 minute in a conversation that is dealing with a topic they do not know about, out of there. I don't want to be in this conversation. You know that, right? Oh, you're talking about engines, car engines, sports? Okay, I'm out of here. In other words, so repulsed by one's own ignorance, they cannot stand it. And this comes out in behaviors like that. Okay, now over time, the person who is now ignorant notices that no matter what I do, it doesn't remove my sense of smallness. No matter how much I learn, how much ignorance, relative knowledge I gain in this buddhi, it still doesn't make me complete. And what does this do? It leads the person to low self-esteem, inferiority. I'm not good enough, so they just put themselves away from the world because on the basis of this smallness alone. Superiority, this is compensation, trying to overachieve things, be big, kind of put on big clothes and look like $1 million. This is all superiority. I'm not saying now everyone's doing that, but this is an issue nevertheless. Greed for more. In other words, maybe one more time is going to make me finally happy, finally fulfilled forever. Jealousy. If someone has what I'm seeking, then maybe, then I don't feel good because it reminds me of my smallness. As long as they have and I don't, I'm small. And if someone obstructs that fulfillment, what happens then? Anger. So if someone obstructs that fulfillment towards desire, then anger. So what am I talking about? So many emotional issues all come from this smallness. What is this smallness? Within the buddhi. What is the buddhi specifically? Lack of self-knowledge, or who is this nature of I am. So the root problem is what? Ignorance of I am. And the effect is emotional disharmony. It's simple as that. All problems, all institutions, therapies that are meant to fix psychological issues stem from the root cause that is ignorance of I am. So the more this knowledge takes place, that means the more we remove our I am ignorance, the more we get what? Emotional harmony. You see how there's a direct correlation there? So therefore, this is not just about intellect, but what is a direct indicator? You feel much better about yourself, about the world, much lighter. So this emotional benefit is there. And finally, let's ask this question. What is the benefit of self-knowledge while alive? So suppose that it's firm. And of course, I'm not saying it's finally firm, but it's always firmer, right? Because it's still nidhyasana. This is a stage to the last breath. So don't look at it as it's firm and that's it. What is the benefit? There is a change of relationship in 3 roles in respect to the person's life. And we all have these 3 roles. So we're talking about a Jivanmukta now. Everyone plays the role of the doer, karta. Now, Jivanmukta's actions are not done out of lack of fulfillment, because most of the actions that are done in this world are what? I don't feel happy. And if I do this action, then I'll be happy because I'm going to get a result, right? Where does the Jivanmukta's actions come from? Out of sense of fullness. So this means out of my fullness, I do things. Whereas before, out of my emptiness, I do things. Why does this happen? Because the mind is not mulling over its smallness. Therefore, it's capable of delivering its presence to the world without saying, oh, I'm not good enough and I'm just going to kind of do it for my own ends. So this means the person is capable of giving you a lot more, being present with you, because they're doing it out of their fullness and not their emptiness. The second is the role of the bhakta. The bhakta we often interpret as enjoyer. Bhakta means experiencer. Because it's not like you're just enjoying life. There's also some pain there. So experiencer. So since the Jivanmukta is operating from fullness, it's as though they're enjoying a certain shock absorber in life. Because as long as the person's operating from smallness, then if there's some challenge, it's almost an extra burden. But if the person's coming from fullness, then if the challenge comes, your fullness stays exactly the same. Therefore, it is as though a emotional experiencing shock absorber. And the last one is the role of the perceiver changes when knowledge is firm. What is perceiver? How do you perceive this world? How do you look at events? What happens every single moment? Okay, what does this mean? Jivanmukta's knowledge of the world is firm. Now notice, they're not just educated about the nature of I, but also the nature of the world. What is this world? Panchamahabhuta, right? And what does it resolve into? The subtler elements, and that resolves into Maya, etc. So that knowledge is also there, and that makes you perceive this world with a certain amount of sanctity, certain amount of holiness. Therefore, things become worthy of worship. Not just the temple, Sunday or Monday, but your own house becomes worthy of worship. Your own trees that you have in your garden become worthy of worship, because everything is made out of the same nimitta karanam and upadana karanam, material and intelligent cause. To demonstrate this, there were a nice story of 3 people that were building a temple. And they were all asked the same question, right? They were building a temple. The person once said, what are you doing? And the person once said, I'm breaking bricks. I'm putting bricks together. What are you doing? Person 2 said, I'm building a temple. What are you doing? Person 3, the wise one, said, I am facilitating the relationship between God and his devotees. Same action, different attitude. This is what it means to have a perception change on the basis of knowledge. You can only say that if you understand what is the nature of this entire world. Otherwise, it becomes all fake. So what does this mean? The Jivanmukta is ironically the most prayerful, the most devotional, the most active, the most proactive in life. Why? Because they understand that they play a very significant role in this grand order. It's not like you're insignificant. And that understanding that you indeed are playing a role in this world that enjoys your benefits, whereby you shine what you're gifted with, on the basis of that, the person is gladly enjoyed in what they love, in what they do, and they give that to the world. Okay, and this concludes our summary of chapter 12. Well done for listening and contemplating, hopefully. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.